Hello everybody. I'm trying out something new here today. I've started a new I'm trying out a new streaming service called Ecamm Live for those who are interested in such things. I used to use BeLive.com, which I hate with passion, so I decided to try something that some of the more big shot professionals use. It's called Ecamm Live. It's actually a lot cheaper than BeLive for whatever reason. The functionality seems to be much better, and I really like it. So here goes. For those who don't know, I'm right at the beginning of a rather insane challenge that I've decided I would try. So a little bit of background, very quickly. I need to get book 5 done. That's pretty clear, of my series, my Raven Sun epic fantasy series. I'm already about a month late. Seraphim, good to see you. As you see, slightly better, slightly more human than yesterday and earlier today. But so I decided to force myself to get things done, and the best, most effective way for me to do that is to actually put myself into the meat grinder and give myself an almost impossible deadline. So that's what I'm doing. I'm giving myself 10 days to finish roughly 50,000 words. That's about 5,000 words a day. The best that I've done over an extended period of time is 20,000 over the is 20,000 over a period of. Oops. There we go. Look, Seraphim, I can actually share your comments. How about that? This is one of the cool things about Ecamm Live. Anyway, what was I saying? Yes, the best I've ever done is about 20,000 pages, 20,000 words over the course of 6 days. So that would be like not quite 4,000 words a day. So this is going to be the most difficult thing I've ever done. In terms of actually focusing long enough to be able to do something consistently for 10 days at a rate that I've never done. So day 1, which was 2 days ago, I managed to get 2,500 actually finished words. It was closer to 3,000, but I had to get rid of about 500 because they were bad. So that will also happen sometimes. Yesterday I had a migraine, so that was lovely. Right in the beginning of everything, I had a migraine, the kind that doesn't let you do anything. So I decided I would fix it. And how did I fix it? I took 2 Excedrins. Except that I've been having, well, maybe this is too much information, but basically it didn't have the intended reaction. So yesterday was a lost day. And this morning I woke up and I felt a little bit better, and then it got bad again with the headache. And I'm thinking, okay, what did I just set myself up for a massive fall? Here I am telling everybody that I'm going to be doing this 10-day challenge, that I'm challenging myself in front of everyone, try to get myself some accountability going. And here in day 2, I'm collapsing, and in day 3, I'm almost saying, well, do I really need to do this? I can just start over in a few days when things get a little bit less hectic. Like they ever get less hectic, let's be honest. So what ended up happening was the headache slowly faded away, and it helped that it was 65 degrees outside after yesterday being around 40, and the day before actually snowing. So I think spring is actually here, and I think the sun is helping to get the natural juices to flow. So by around 6 p.m., I had written tonight, on day 3 of this 10-day journey, I had written exactly 0 words today and 0 words yesterday, which means that I'm about, at this point, 12,000 words behind. A page is, on average, 350 words. And a writer who is fairly confident in the story that he or she is writing can get on average about 1,000 words an hour. It can be more, it can be less. It depends on your own rhythm. So that should tell you I'm about 12 hours or so behind. So it was a classic case of what Stephen Pressfield calls the resistance. Those of you who have read Stephen Pressfield and his book The War of Art will know what this is. If you haven't read The War of Art or any of his other books, highly recommended. Steve Pressfield is a really interesting guy. He's got a lot of really useful things to say about the creative process, and the things that he has to say about what he calls the resistance is some really fantastic stuff for any of you who do creative endeavors or do creative work, whether professionally or not. He calls the resistance an actual malignant force, a malign force that gets up and gets in your way every time you sit down to create. Now, he's not in any way a Christian, Stephen Pressfield. He's closer to an old time Greek pagan. He even talks about worshiping the muse, capital M. I'm not sure how serious he is, or whether or not he's talking about it in a more figurative way. But certainly when somebody who is not a Christian talks about a malignant influence coming up and standing in your way, then my ears perk up, because it's something rather interesting when you don't have a tradition of demonology to fall back on, and yet you're using the language that the Holy Fathers would use when they're talking about actual forces getting in your way. So whether or not the resistance is a negative force of the evil one, what it is that initial huge block that gets in your way right before you start to create. And for me, in the last few months, it's come up as severe self-doubt. Even though I know that once I sit down, the words will come. In fact, lately, and I'll tell you right now, in 2 hours of work from 6 to 8 p.m. today, which is the point at which I managed to actually defeat the resistance today, I got 3,500 words written. That pace is really fast for me. And I'm not sure if it's sustainable, but it's faster than it was 2 days ago. So it seems like already, if we're going to continue this rhythm, that I might be getting to a point where I'm really getting into the flow of the story of Book 5. Book 5 is almost exactly at the middle right now, and we're getting to the really juicy stuff about basically the point in the plot diagram where everything goes bad. And that's easy to write. Let's be honest. If you're writers, you know what I'm talking about. It's the conflicts that are easy to write. The resolutions are harder. The endings are the worst. The beginnings are possibly even worse than that. So there's no reason at all for me not to sit down and churn out these words by the thousands. And yet it took me until 6 p.m. to finally have my wife smack me across the head and force me to get it done. Seraphim, yes, I hear you, absolutely. This is exactly right. Oh, man. So anyway, I wanted to remind you all that the resistance is real. The resistance is a thing. And even when you think it's not going to come and get you, that's when it comes to get you. It gets you the most. So there are ways out of it. For me, it's actually quite simple. The way that I actually do it is I have to follow a certain set of repeatable actions, which turn out to be a kind of a ritual. And if any of you follow Michael Hyatt, you'll understand what I'm talking about. It's kind of a workday startup ritual in his language. Basically, the idea is that if you have certain easily repeatable actions that you can default to at a fairly regular, in a fairly regular way, as in consistently over time, then your body will automatically flow into those actions without there being any mental resistance or emotional resistance. And by doing those actions, you're helping your body and therefore your mind get into the zone of actually writing without the resistance getting in your way. So for me, it looks something like this. I have a place for my writing, or at least a place where I start my writing, and that's at my desk right here. This desk is where not all of my work gets done, and sometimes this is the place of distraction. But if I follow the right order, this place is a very fecund place. There's a lot of good things that happen over here. So this is my place. Then what I have to do is I have to turn on the right kind of music. Recently, I was simultaneously thrilled and upset to find out that the Tallis Scholars were one of my favorite early music ensembles. Yes, I know some of you are like, what, early music? Are having financial troubles because of the virus. They're obviously not performing anywhere, and they've had to cancel pretty much all of their concerts. So what they've done is they've made a playlist out of most of their recent recordings, and they've made it available, not for free, but for any subscribers of most of the streaming music services that are out there. Now, I stream with Pandora, but Pandora apparently, and I didn't know this, but Pandora pays its artists a really low fee. And in finding out about why the Talus scholars weren't allowing to Pandora to have this playlist of some of their best stuff, that's where I found out. So I stopped using Pandora completely. I cut off Pandora entirely, and I subscribed to Apple Music, which for the first 3 months is free for me. So that was exciting. And basically, I now have almost the entire catalog of the Talus scholars singing some of the most beautiful Renaissance choral music of all time in some of the best performance practice of the last 30, 40 years. And as soon as I turn that stuff on, it's like I enter into a different space. This music is it's a really interesting thing that happens to me. I have to have it in a different language. So if it's in English, so much of the English stuff I have to skip, because if I understand it, it gets in the way. But if it's in a language I don't understand, somebody was laughing at me about this earlier, but the music is so complex, and the harmonies are so they're so intricate that I'm not actually listening to the music as I'm writing, but the music is happening, and all those intricacies and a kind of mathematical precision of it is all happening, and it actually orders my brain. I can feel myself entering into a flow state much more quickly if I'm listening to this kind of music. And the getting over the initial hump of the resistance and into a state where I'm actually writing without thinking what I'm writing and just being in the state of creation, it's much faster if I have the right kind of music turned on. So for me, that's absolutely very important for number 2. So number 1, find a place, that's here. Number 2, turn on the right music. For me, that's the Talus scholars. I forgot what they're calling it. Wait, I have to share this. Dr. Jenkins says, wait, you don't know Latin? Yes, I speak Latin to my children all the time, naturally. Yes, well, yes. No, I don't know Latin. Or not enough in order for it to actually intrude on my English writing. So yeah, it actually works for Slavonic too. I know Slavonic quite well, but if I'm listening to Slavonic music and I'm writing in English, most of the time it doesn't bother me. Then the next step to really get into a good flow state with writing for me is something that's recommended by a lot of professional fiction writers, and especially those who are prolific in terms of their publishing. And I'm talking about specifically Kevin J. Anderson, who has published over 100 books, and Dean Wesley Smith, whom I consider to be a kind of a mentor, as well as his wife, Christine Catherine Rush. Yes, Dr. Jenkins' Talus scholars are truly phenomenal. So this technique that they recommend for you to get into the flow of writing more easily is something that I think they call cycling. But basically what it is you take the thing you were writing the day before, if it's appropriate to the piece that you're writing at this point, or you take the nearest scene that has relevance to the scene that you're about to write, and you read through it. This is reading through the first draft of it most of the time. And as you read, you don't simply read, but you read with a slightly critical eye. Not with your editor brain on completely, but you are reading to get into the flow of the words, to get into the flow of the story, to remind yourself of what's happening, but also to start the brain already getting warmed up into that place where it can start writing more freely. And this works really well, because what ends up happening is that if you do that, if you just turn your editor brain on for a little bit, it actually cleans up your manuscript really well, while at the same time warming up, getting your writer brain, your creative brain warmed up. And as soon as you're done with the cycling through with the reading, you turn off your editor brain, and this sometimes takes a little bit of practice. And initially, if you don't do this very often, you might have a bit of a slow period transitioning from editor brain to creative brain, and that's perfectly normal. For me, I've gotten used to it, so for me, it happens almost automatically. But what that ends up doing, it might be counterintuitive, but what it actually ends up doing is, by the time you finish the first draft, it's not really a first draft anymore, because you've gone through the previous scene several times already, and you fixed errors that your editor brain has been picking up. So you end up finishing with a pretty clean first draft. And you end up, especially if you're at the point where I am now, where I'm already writing effectively what's my 8th book, you don't need to have the luxury of somebody like a developmental editor or a story coach who is basically there to catch you when you make really stupid mistakes in terms of story. That, if you can get to a point where you cycle through your writing regularly and you get to a point where premise and story start to come out more naturally, you can set aside that kind of editing entirely, and you can focus entirely on getting that first draft as clean as possible to then give to a copy editor who's much cheaper to work with, by the way, than a developmental editor. And they're hard to come by, so that's an entirely different thing we can talk about later. But at that point, then, what ends up happening is there's a lot less work for the editor, so you get your edit back more quickly, and you can get the thing published also more quickly. So this is what I did with book 4, and it's certainly working really well with book 5. So I'm at a little more than 45,000 words for the total manuscript, and I don't know how much it's going to be. I'm aiming for 100, but the story is coming out really fast, and it's coming out more economically than I expected. There's a lot happening, but because there's a lot of action, and because this is book 5, there isn't a lot of exposition, there isn't a lot of setting the scene. All the scene setting has been happening in the first 4 books. You can get to the juicy, the meaty stuff much more quickly. So I'm not sure. This might actually be slightly less than 100,000 words. So for those of you who don't know, that means it'll probably be even shorter than The Song of the Siren, my book 1, and definitely shorter than my book 3, which is my longest one. But I don't think it's going to suffer because of it. Of course, I could come back in 7 days and tell you that we've reached 135,000 words. That's entirely possible. But my hunch is that it's going to be shorter than I thought it would be. So that means you'll get it faster. So that's a good thing, I suppose. Anyway, this is day 3 of my 10-day how to finish a novel in 10 days. Stick with me if you like. If this is something you want to, if something you're interested in terms of the actual techniques of how this could be done, I will be doing a webinar. This is assuming I actually get this thing done, this thing completed in time, and assuming this challenge actually works. We're already hit one of the speed bumps along the hero's journey, but anyway, assuming that it all works, I'm going to be doing a webinar where I'm going to talk about what worked, what didn't, and coming up with some hopefully standard best practices. Anyway, for those who don't know, I do have also a Patreon page, patreon.com/Nicholas Kotar, and the reason I'm talking about that here is that if you sign up right now at the $5 level at patreon.com/Nicholas Kotar, you will automatically get for this month my first 3 books in the Raven Sun series as an ebook box set, basically for free. And at the $5 level, every single book that I publish, you get it in ebook format, whatever ebook format you like, for free. So that's, at this point, 1 book a month. So it's been 5 months, and every single month I've given a new book to my readers. And in the month of May, that is the first 3 books of my Raven Sun series, and in the month of June, that's going to be book 5. So if this is something that you're interested in, obviously right now, all of us artists, especially those who create independently, are very much dependent on the on funding that comes from independent sources. So if you are interested in what I do, if you think it's worth, if you think it's a good thing that I do, if you think it's worth it for me to continue, I would really appreciate it if you just go and check out my Patreon page. And if that is something that you are interested in supporting, now is a really good time to join. Anyway, in the meantime, it's late. It's been a long, long day. I'm excited about getting started tomorrow again, bright and early, after taking a long walk in what hopefully will be a non-rainy day, but it's supposed to be even warmer tomorrow than it is today. The green is just starting to come out on the trees. It's the best time of year. I just love it, so I can't wait. And hopefully I will have some more good news by the end of tomorrow, by the end of this first week. Perhaps we'll even get to 10 or 15,000 words within what is effectively 3 days of writing, even though tomorrow is going to be day 4. There's a few great more comments here. Stuart Spencer, Seraphim says, Stuart Spencer said something to the effect that broken rituals are the foundation of conflict, especially if you want to have a conflict with yourself. Then yeah, definitely break your own ritual for sure. There's a lot of bittersweetness in what you say, Seraphim, because it in a lot of ways reflective of what's going on in the world around us. But today I'm not going to talk about that. Today it's only about writing and about day 3, successfully completed day 3 of my 10-day challenge to finish book 5. I will let you know how it goes tomorrow or the day after. I'm not sure I'm going to do this every day, but I think probably tomorrow night I'll check in with you all and let you know how it goes. In the meantime, good night, and I hope you are all doing well. Now I have to figure out how to turn this off on Ecamm Live. All right, everybody, good night. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're healthy, you're happy, and that you are all making time to create. See you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.